welcome to 50/50. Hello, Hazel.
Hi, Tamara.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. I often get a feeling as I'm coming into Danielle's into the studio, and I thought, what's my feeling about being with Hazel? And I thought the best word to sum it up is happy.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm happy is because I just love who you are, what you do, the difference you're trying to make. You can really feel your love.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're really nice to spend time with. We've only spent one other time together, haven't we?
Yeah.
Caught up for the first time.
And it was lovely and got to hear about your Irish roots and
That's
everything
right.
else. Yeah, it was so lovely.
Yeah, as you can hear from your beautiful accent, which we're all obsessed with here, you are from Ireland.
I'm from the west of Ireland. Yeah,
You're
that's
from the
correct.
west of Ireland. So which part are you from, just so we can get the curiosity piece out of the way?
It's a county called Mayo, which
yes.
is next to Galway.
Yes.
So right on the west coast.
I think a lot of us know Galway, don't we?
Yeah,
a lot of us go on our tours to Galway.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's definitely probably one of my favourite places to visit, for sure. I always tell people, if you're coming to Ireland, spend like 1 or 2 days in Dublin, but then go straight to Galway.
Yes.
Get that real authentic experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would agree. I like Dublin, but I didn't like it like when I got to the west coast and then down to, is it Dingle that's at the very south?
In County Kerry. Yeah, beautiful place. There's like one dolphin. Don't know
Like
if you came across that yet. But
with the little stairway down and everyone takes their photo there. And I think I shared with you when we met, I went on a backpacking thing many years ago and I went on Tiernan tour, which is a terrible way of pronouncing the Gaelic, right? Do you know what Tiernan stands for?
I don't know. I should know.
I think we'll say it means seize the day. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
So I went on this Seize the Day Tiernan tour and of course we were all very young and very committed to drinking, and Ireland's supportive of that culture because we went from pub to pub, and the Irish music alone, to go into a pub and listen to the real fiddle and come on. Anyway, they had a rule, if we closed our eyes on the bus during the day, there was some sort of punishment, I can't remember. So I spent a lot of time with my hand up, my sunglasses on and my elbow on the window pretending to, gasp wistfully, not gasp, what am I trying to say? Glance at the beautiful countryside. I missed so many bits from being asleep from my big night.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wasn't the best tourist. I had a lovely time though.
Oh, you always have time to go back anyways.
I know, it's true, right?
Yeah, both me and Ashley now as well.
It's true, the top and bottom, the north and south.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, that's right?
Yeah.
So you are here now. How long ago did you come to Australia?
It will be 6 years in April that I've came to Australia. I originally landed in Cairns.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I landed in thinking that I was on the wrong plane, and I landed in the wrong country because it was lashing rain. It was a tropical place, and I grew up seeing pictures of my parents in like the desert outback, mustering horseback on cattle stations. And I was like, I definitely got on the wrong flight at Singapore. Like, this is not Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful, though. It was like really close to the Daintree rainforest.
Yes.
I was in the wettest part of Australia, a place called Innisfail. Just banana farming almost 6 years ago. So it's been quite a journey. But yeah, I haven't looked back since. Like, so happy to be here. Yeah, this country has so many opportunities for everyone, really, to be honest. Yeah. So I guess I left Ireland probably about 11 years ago now.
Okay.
So this is actually my 6th country to live in. I was living in Malta and Spain, Greece, Lanzarote, and Ireland. Did I name them all? Yeah. And then obviously Australia.
Wow.
But yeah, Australia was always kind of the goal.
Yes.
So I was so glad. It's like, I made it here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And what made it the goal for you? What was it about what you knew that you thought? Did your parents work here?
My parents came out here as backpackers in their early 20s.
Oh, wow.
So we had this massive box in the house with like photo albums of them on like the horses and the cattle stations, or else they'll be in one of those old Volkswagen camper vans travelling the East Coast. Yeah, it was beautiful. So we would just gather around and, you know, kind of see their time. And they just constantly talked about Australia. And it was just always that place where I was like, I need to go there. And yeah, it was always my dream to actually muster horseback on a cattle station and have that kind of cowgirl outback experience.
Yes.
And years in Australia, like completing various of regional work, I finally got to live out my dream in the middle of Queensland, a place near Rollestone.
Yes.
And I lasted only a few weeks. It was like so isolated. And then that's when I found myself in mining. But yeah.
But you did it. You got to the dream.
I got to do it. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah.
So does that mean you were a good horsewoman before that?
Yeah, grew up with horses. So Dad had racehorse stables back in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we'd train horses from the UK or Spain and we'd race them, as well as we had a lot of construction in the family as well. So,
wow.
Yeah, but we lost that probably when I was about 12 in the recession, but always stayed within me, like grew up with horses. And yeah, I'm definitely a horse girl.
I was going to say, I don't think the horse passion ever leaves once it starts,
no,
right?
Definitely not.
Yeah,
no.
I think people that love horses can't recover from how beautiful they are to be around.
Yeah.
What a fascinating young childhood to be involved in racing.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like, most of my childhood was spent racing my cousins on the bales of hay or just racing on the horses' backs. Yeah, just like full country experience.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I always wanted to be a townie. Like, I always wanted to hang out with my townie friends. I thought it was cool that they got to just go next door. I was in the middle of nowhere. Like, so yeah. But looking back now, I'm so grateful to have had that in my childhood for sure.
Yeah, it's funny in hindsight, isn't it, versus what you would have wanted at the time, you know, but now you look back and go, oh, fancy it being able to have done that, you know.
Definitely.
So Australia was, I get why it was in your psyche with the parents having been here and had a very dramatically good time, you know, with the mustering and I actually have a real passion for combis. It almost is more than my Mercedes, but I won't say that because of the sponsorship deal that we're hoping for. But I do really, really love old combis. And a little bit like you're growing up with your parents having this Australian story. When I was very little, we went across the Nullarbor in one of those combis.
Oh, wow.
I was 18 months old, I can't remember. But I think on a cellular level, I got the combi. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So you land in this lashing town. I can imagine the rain. I know far north Queensland. I'm going very cliched, did you go to Innisfail and pick fruit? Is that the start of your life?
Banana farming, banana picking.
Is it true there's famously massive spiders in those bananas?
Definitely. So I remember my first day, like, even everything is dramatic in size in Australia compared to Europe. And there was this massive moth, like literally like this, like massive, 2 hands. And I screamed because I never seen anything like that size before.
Yes.
And my farmer was like Italian background Aussie, and he was like, if you ever scream like that again, you're gone and your visa. Well, there's a lot of swearing in there, but I'm not going to swear on this.
Yeah, thank you. I do, but I appreciate if you don't. Yeah, that's appropriate.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So like the next day, I think we had to go out into the paddock, and I was just walking face front into like the huntsman, like the giant spiders. And it just kind of got like almost the norm where you just pull off the webs and everything, or there'd be tree snakes or like the frogs, the toads, all this kind of,
Whoa.
It was definitely a resilience program in itself, I guess.
And you had learned, I screamed at a moth, I now must take huntsman in the face if I'm going to keep this job.
Yeah.
He'd taught you very clearly, hadn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
It was important. It was your first gig. You needed to make it work.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. Made it work, stayed in the country, got my days done, because that's what it was all about, I guess. Yeah. It was definitely a story for sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't know if I would have been as brave as you. That sounds quite extraordinary. So you've done that, and then I know where you end up working, but how long was the travail between that first job and first starting to work in mining? Was it very long or not so many years?
That was my first year, and then I ended up in Sydney, so it would have been my second year regional work. Yeah, so I managed to find myself in my dream job, you know, mustering horseback on this cattle station. But it was so isolated. It was a population of 13 people.
Wow.
And I was like in an abandoned house to myself. There was no locks on the doors. The windows were smashed. Like the toilet was outside, and there were wild dingoes, and because there were even dead dingoes and everything there. It was like a real outback experience.
Yes.
The horses would come straight up to your door, which was pretty cool. And then, yeah, I was actually really scared at nighttime to go outside and go to the toilet. Like, I have to walk outside. Sometimes I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to burst my bladder. But yeah. But yeah, there were just a few issues, ethical issues that I didn't agree with on that farm. And there were big enough ethical issues for me to leave. Like, and I think there was a little bit of a old school issue about me being from where I am in Ireland, and their background as well, which I never came across before in my life. So it was really interesting. Like it was a very interesting experience. Like, you know, I was helping their kids as well. And they're proper country kids. Like, I thought I was country. I was trying to tell a 10-year-old to do his homework. He was in sharpening a Stanley knife in his room. And I was like, okay, this is pretty, this is pretty country. Or, like, just, they would have a ute that I'd have to pick up the kids from the bus stop. And then I remember the 10-year-old, like, in the back picked up a full rifle. It was the dad's hunting gun. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, that's loaded, and just like unloaded the gun and gave me the bullets. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Thanks,
like,
buddy.
My heart is just not going to be able to take it. They were good kids. It was just like, it was experience. And I remember like there'd be people coming in and traveling to get the animals, how they are alive. And they would do everything there and then, and they just passed the cash over to take the animals. And yeah, I remember just getting a funky look off one of the strangers that came that day, and because there were no locks on my door, I was like putting glass bottles on top of the doorknobs. I was like really scared, so I was like, this isn't a way for me to live anymore. So I was like, I need to go. But my friend from high school, she rang me because she saw a story put up on Instagram, and she was like, I'm getting you a job in the mines, come down and check it out. And I was like, cool. I've never like really heard of the mines other than, you know, a couple of TV shows when I was back in Ireland, really young. And I called another friend who was stuck on a farm in Queensland, a Pommy girl. She's a really good crack. And I was like, you'll have to come down with me. I'm going to rescue you. She's rescued me. Let's go together.
Let's go.
And we went on our first mine, and we blew all our money on the way down thinking we were going to make millions there. So we were like, might as well. And we finally got to this mine called Mount Boppy. It's in the middle of New South Wales.
Oh, wow.
Just like 40 minutes outside of Cobar. So there's no town, no facilities on this mine site. It was just a camp essentially, and it was pretty interesting because that was my first introduction into the mining industry. But like nobody said hello to each other in the morning, and we were like, okay, we have to spend 6 months here for our regional work. How are we going to like live here and have fun and enjoy our life at the same time? So I think that's when we started to like implement different activities onto that site. So I drove like 4.5 hours to Dubbo to get like fitness equipment, started up 5 a.m. run clubs, started after work gym classes. I was kind of getting tired of crumbed pork chops and mushy peas every day, so I started asking for like alternatives for our dinners. So started doing salads, everything else. And my friend would do karaoke nights, and we started to bring life and connection into the camp, and it was beautiful. Like I was on a 13-day on, 1 day off roster, so I had 2 days off every month. So it gave us enough time to get to know each other. So I was basically living in my donga for like what was supposed to be 6 months, but ended up like a year and a half because of COVID.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so we managed to form like a sense of community on that like mine site, which was beautiful because it went from a mine that nobody spoke to each other, everyone handled any kind of stresses by themselves, to being a community where we were all very engaged, looking out for each other. It was uplifting, it was fun, and I felt like I could be my full self because I felt so safe and yeah, just like happy with how connected we were as a community. Yeah.
That's an amazing story. Oh my God. So there's two elements. Firstly, if no one's ever told you before, you've had much more of an Australian experience than any Australian I've ever met. I've never wiped a husband off my face, and if there was no doors and an unused house, when you said there was ethical issues, I was like, could it have been your housing that was the ethical issue?
Well, that's just one.
I love that your friend saved you, you saved your friend, and off you go to the mine. And then having been someone that's worked in the mines for a long time as a consultant, the thought of you as a young woman being able to impact the culture in that way is extraordinary. Both that you had the chutzpah to do it, go, we're going to have to make this a bit better. I'm driving to Dubbo.
Yeah.
But then when I think of the people that I've met, a lot of them are very tough and very committed to their old ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So help me bridge the gap. How did you go to Dubbo, start the thing, and everyone eventually gets on board? How many people were there, and how long did it take for people to come together in the way you described?
Yeah, great question. And it's so true. It made me laugh when you said that people can be stuck in their ways, because the chef was very much like that. I had to break them. It was the matter of like, who's this girl coming in, you know, bringing in the salads or this and that. But eventually, yeah, that probably would have taken a couple of months to get in. So yeah, that was interesting. I say there was about 30 of us staying in the camp, and then there was additional people who lived like maybe 45 minutes, an hour outside of it.
Okay.
In a place called Ningen. And yeah, so there's probably about over 30 of us in total. Yeah, it was very, very interesting. I think as well, Billy, my friend, the Pommy girl, she's so out there. She's so bubbly, and just being around her, and we were like the duo that came in like together, just kind of struck a bit of light into a place like, yeah, maybe that not have had it for a while, not too sure, but it was great to see it. It definitely took a while. I remember on one of my first days, she was building like a Go team, like ramp with stones, and I was like, is she serious? But I was like, might as well join in, like, you know. And she was just so fun, and yeah, she's incredible. She's a really good friend, and I was so happy to be able to spend my year and a half out there with her.
How gorgeous.
Yeah.
And also you can hear the two of you being together, how teamwork, even if the team starts as two, to have like, you know, have each other to go, I get what you're doing, I'm on board. We interviewed, it's coming out soon actually, our interview with Cindy Kennedy, and she was talking about working with women in an executive space, and I was saying, how do you get them to feel safe enough to be who they are, where there's very set boundaries? And she said, I only work with groups because they all have to graduate together, so that when one says, hang on, don't talk to me like that, or I want to work part-time because of my baby, or any other gender-based thing, they've got a gang. And you had a very small gang, but it was a strong gang, because there was you going, I've wiped Huntsman, I can do anything, and your friend who sounded like the life of the party and was up for anything, right? So you made a good duo.
Definitely. Like, there were definitely those issues that you find in the industry, like the common issues, mental health, sexual harassment, bullying, all of that was still there. But I think because we all got to know each other, we were all stuck there through COVID, it all had to be dealt with each other, because we couldn't exactly go anywhere, and we weren't very replaceable in that time either. So it was really interesting, and it was a big learning curve for me as well, to be able to stay and overcome obstacles instead of running away, because I feel like we all deal with things very differently, and my exile style would definitely be like, it's like fire extinguisher, so it means you're going to try and escape, because we all have different escape styles. So yeah, it was definitely a massive learning journey for me, that I was able to carry over to WA. So that was, yeah, definitely something that I was really grateful for to have experienced.
Yeah, how wonderful.
Sure.
And you also remind me of something when you said, you know, when people are a group, like a faceless or nameless group, once you get to know people, when I was doing a piece locum here, I was angry about, I'm often angry about something to do with corporations. And she said one of the things that is useful to look at is as soon as you say they, you dehumanise the group. Whereas that group, because you got to know one another, lived together, ate together, did activities together, you would have got to know people, and then however they started, once you know more about them, you both understand why they are like they are. If they're more tricky, doesn't mean they don't need boundaries, but, you know, love and boundaries. And then you got to know them. So you did this. You did it for an hour and a half, year and a half because of COVID, and then was your next experience at WA mine?
Yeah, I did do a couple of more months out in another mine that the same owners had. But yeah, then I ended up in mining in WA. I took a bit of a detour because it was COVID. I couldn't directly go from New South Wales to WA.
Yes.
I ended up moving to Darwin where I was starting with Glencore. But last minute, I ended up changing and getting into WA.
Okay.
But yeah, it was definitely, I was having this pull to WA for quite a while, and I just knew I had to go there, and ended up in the mining industry in WA where I was doing blast. So previously I would do, I mean, my first role was stick picking. I was just picking sticks out of the ore because I had to show them that I was capable of work and
hard work.
Yeah, hard work. Yeah, so I did like all the machinery then, like the loaders, the trucks, the diggers, and then went into the geology side of things. I got to go around. Like one day I'd be a cleaner, cook, or a PT, or
oh wow,
yeah, it was just a small mine, so we got to bounce around.
I was going to say that's really unusual.
Very
maybe because
unusual.
It was a smaller mine.
Yeah, definitely. So I was like, I'd like to do blast. So I checked it out in WA, got in straight away, and I was really excited. And yeah, it was around the time that the 50-50 target ratio had came in for male and female workers.
Yes.
So it was definitely an exciting time to be in the industry.
Yes.
But like coming away from a mine that was very small and was a sense of community that we worked really hard on, and then to go onto a mine that's so many facilities, like an oval, a gym, a bar, yeah, literally everything.
Yeah.
Swimming pool. I was like, this is insane. Like, this is perfect.
Good.
And my crew were incredible as well. Like, I was really grateful for them. But what I noticed is what a lot of like mental health issues and sexual harassment was just like amplified from the small mine that I was on.
Yes.
And I felt like I had that sense of being a safe person for people to come and speak to. So often or not, someone from the team would come and have a chat and kind of tell me what they're going through. And often it would be like a financial crisis or issue. Like suicide ideation.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry for anyone that is listening. I may mention suicide. I actually do some work with Mason Construction. So if anyone is affected by this or triggered in any way, you can call 1300-642-111. And yeah, so it was just like really sad that I didn't have the tools that I now have to help people navigate their suicidal thoughts or the ideation to do it, but just had that gut feeling that something wasn't right, and we all have that, so we can all use that. So it's like obviously our superpower. But on top of that, I was seeing like a lot of divorce rates in the industry, and it could be someone like my superintendent. I seen how much it was affecting him financially as well, losing access to seeing his kids as much as he did before, even if he wasn't FIFO. Yeah, I just managed vitality problems, like men who have been in the field for years, maybe not have had an educational background or like a role in corporate, more so those hands-on kind of roles. He would be struggling in pain like every day and just not kind of able to leave the industry because that's what paid the bills. And yeah, it just started to click with me that these people really need help. And I was very aware of the EAP services, but I was just kind of like, oh, there's something else that needs to be put here. Like I ended up talking like to two friends out of suicide from that mine. And yeah, I was just kind of concerned. But what I noticed was I was in the gym and it was the time of the 50-50 target ratio. There was a lot of like there was a lot of things being put into place around bullying and sexual harassment.
Yes.
And I felt like the environment became more fearful because there was a lot of anger from both sides, like male and female, about what is going on in the industry, but also not knowing how to like talk to each other anymore. They lost that sense of connection, trust, safety, and everything else. That I was in the gym and I was like, oh, if I dropped a piece of equipment on me, would someone be a bit scared that it would come across the wrong way? Like I was having all these thoughts and I was like, oh, it just doesn't feel the same anymore. And yeah, I was like in my room one day in my donga, and I had just after coming back from a toolbox meeting around sexual harassment. And I remember the superintendent was giving out information, and two guys on either side of me just decided to ask questions. And one of them spoke up in anger, and he was like, I feel like a predator just putting on my uniform and going to the airport, and I'm a loving father of like a daughter. I'm a loving husband. Like, why do I feel so targeted just for being a man in the industry?
Yes.
And yeah, the superintendent may not have had the gender equity or education around that particular question, and just shut him down. Was like, it is what it is, mate. Which is not giving education to allow him to have understanding, to allow him to have peace of mind, which causes more frustration.
Yes.
And then the guy on the other side of me was like, my mate has like 17 years experience. He's been made redundant and he can't get another job, but there's these female only apply jobs. And yeah, like it's just not fair. Like these women are coming in and they don't have the skills like my mate. And like I knew the answer to that, but the superintendent again shut him down. More anger, frustration, going to cause a more of a fearful dynamic and anger like dynamic between the male and female workers. And I was like, this is so wrong. If only we had an expert that could kind of answer all of those questions, like the likes of Ashley or yeah. And yeah, it was just a few things that really stood out to me, or I felt like I was being showed, as I'm quite a spiritual person. I felt like I was being showed all of this for a reason.
Yes.
And yeah, I had seen a woman who I briefly mentioned on one of your LinkedIn posts, who was going through her menopause. She was 50, absolutely like such a lovely woman.
Yes.
But she was going through a relationship breakdown as there was some infidelity. She was away from the kids for the first time. She was drilling blasts as well. So blasts were like on the floor with the explosives, with the drilled holes. It can be like quite a dangerous job. And she had a lot going on in her mind. So that like is going to be like the lights, you know, someone's there but nobody's kind of at home or whatever.
Yes.
And I've experienced that myself when I've had lots of stuff going on. I think we all do, where we're a bit like just not currently in the present moment.
Yes.
And she started to get bullied like severely by some of the men in the field, and she was called all sorts of names. And I knew what was going on because she had been communicating with me what's happening. And when I knew this, obviously I'm going to speak to them in an Irish tone, like that this is not right, like, and I'm gonna have to bring this to someone's attention. So I got my the shot fire involved, and we kind of got other people involved as well. But it was just a lack of education from them, not knowing that this is actually a sign of mental stress. And she had a near miss of falling down like a 22-meter hole that day, which is like critical. Like it could have been really, really bad. And I was like, okay, so that's lack of education, lack of understanding, lack of empathy is what causes bullying.
Yes.
So that night, went into my donga, I wrote down financial literacy education, and then I wrote down another column like relationship experts, well-being psychologists, and then the other column was vitality, so like pain specialists, nutrition, exercise programming, and then the next one I wrote was like cultural engagement, like fun activities, like TEDx speakers, athletes, everything else.
Yes.
And I was like, I need to create a space where male and female workers can come together after work hours and like just get to speak about well-being topics and situations that we all have in common. Because currently, as human beings, we try to find what we have in common to get to know one another.
Yes.
And on the minds, that can sometimes look like only knowing each other. So you'll find a lot of people just talking about each other, which is like toxic communication topics. So if we talk about things that we all go through, like financial issues, relationship problems, we're actually caught like creating healthy conversational topics.
Yes.
On site, and being able to open up and express what you're currently going through with your mate next to you who may not have even thought that you were going through anything, that's going to automatically create like empathy. That's going to reduce bullying. So I was like, okay, this needs to happen. And so I guess it was the fact that the male and female workers were coming into the industry. I was like, this is going to complement that by giving them a space to really get to know each other and to kind of go back to the basics again. And it's been, that's I guess where Enjoy Your Mind, my adventure was born. I was on site, I created that. Enjoy Your Mind is now a social enterprise that was created in Dodonga that day. But shortly after, I was going through my own issues, personal issues, and there were a few psychosocial hazards in place around that time. And I ended up having a life-changing injury back that day a few years ago, where it ended up being a spinal cord injury. And now I have like a build-up of fluid in my spinal cord, and I was unable to walk. I was off the road because I couldn't drive. I was losing like the feelings in my leg and everything.
Wow.
But I remember going to my friend, and I was like, because I was saving for psychology, to study psychology when I was in the mines as an international student. That was like something I've always wanted to do. And I was like, okay, I need to do something in that field. And she was like, get that idea off the piece of paper and like bring it into the real world. And I was like, yeah, let's go. And started from there, I guess.
Yeah, wonderful. There's so much in what you've said. The particular lady and what she was going through, which you kindly shared, because I'd shared about being in perimenopause.
Yeah.
And I shared the last time Danielle and I spoke on Friday 50/50. I love that line. You said new level, new devil.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
You also made me realise one of the reasons I was happy you were coming today is what had people drawn to you on the mind, because I thought, oh, Hazel's so nice and I feel nice when I'm around her.
Aww.
Yeah. So that was where part of the happy came from, right?
Aww.
So there was that, but also I love what you're trying to achieve and I can feel what you're going to achieve over time. That whole piece, having been up on site now for coming up probably 7 years, not on a regular roster because, of course, Andy and I have our own business, so we serve mines rather than live there, and for a few days we pretend we're miners, right?
Yeah.
But we don't do the swings that people do and we don't do the length of time. I've shared on here before, probably when I was talking to Danielle, not with a guest, but my experience of coaching one-on-one with people up there who I've coached with for a long time is the person I know no one else gets to see.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't get to see them is because the rules are so strict around whether it be being tough or joking to cover pain or keeping your pain to yourself. It's so strong that, people go through really quite terrible times. And then, like you said, there's the greatest risk of all that can happen, and the terrible nuclear-like tragedy of someone taking their own life.
Yeah.
So the idea that you came up with that day and have been looking how to implement, my experience of working with people up there is when they haven't known about something before, say we're talking about communication skills or emotional intelligence or even, you know, how we can react from our limbic system, things that they've never heard of.
Yeah.
I've had experiences where I've trained a group of people and then their interactions with me have changed so massively because two things. One, they now have a new understanding of what I was talking about, but two, because I was willing to be vulnerable and share my stuff, they felt much safer with me.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what you're trying to achieve in having people come together, hear a speaker, do a workshop, spend some time together, have conversations.
Yeah.
The
Definitely.
gift to themselves and each other can be enormous, right?
Definitely, yeah. That's what I believe. It's like they have to feel safe enough to be themselves and to be able to, be vulnerable in a space where they can make and forge long-lasting connections on site. Definitely,
Yes.
yeah. And even what you were saying there about people being afraid to speak up about the pain or to report the pain.
Yes.
That's exactly what happened when I had my injury on site. I was afraid that I was going to, have the piss taken out of me or whatever.
Yes.
And I remember that they were so scared around that time that I didn't report it straight away, that they were going to lose their jobs because as my team, they're supposed to also report it. And there was a few issues around that time, but shortly enough, I ended up in hospital and I had to go through the whole workers' comp thing, which I didn't accept for almost a year because I was so scared of being in that system.
Yes.
Thought it was going to affect my employment in the future, everything else. But I was like using all of my savings, and that process in itself is also like extremely tough. Like the comp and just going through the whole new journey of like having to give up all the things I love, like running or so I just feel like obviously the workers' compensation is great for people who have injured themselves at work, but I feel like additional support, how to get them to use their finances, and I'm sure they have something like that already, or like psychological help as well attached to the workers' comp. Because I would be scared for people who, like this man, for example, that I spoke of previously, who was a lot older than me, that if it happened to him, like how he'd be able to come out of that darkness after it's happened. So I was just kind of not lucky, but I was lucky in one sense that I managed to land on my feet again in some way or another.
So you had yourself land on your feet, and you can hear how you would have been able to do that. But for me, that first piece is pivotal, right? We train all sorts of different things, but one of the things Andy and I talk a lot about is culture, and we get people to define culture, and, they'll say things like the way we do things around here, right? And the official definition is a little bit lengthier, but it's the same idea. It's the way people do things without having to speak about it. You just know how to do it. So I always tell a story on the mine we regularly work on, and we work on a few, but we have one main mine we work with. And culturally, how that mine worked was everyone on the bus got off row by row. That was the agreement. I didn't know. I was new. I hadn't been told the cultural rule, because you don't get told the cultural rule. I was sitting up the back, shot for the front, and I could feel intuitively I was getting a lot of death stares because I shot past everyone. That wasn't the rule. You go out a row at a time, right? But I didn't know it. So when you said, I had this injury, but I was scared I was going to, that sort of unspoken toughness, unspoken don't complain, unspoken joke but don't be authentic. When I think of, there's such a level of toughness and an agreed toughness, and you do need a level of toughness. You're getting up at ridiculous hours, you're working very hard, you're living, like you said, in a donga. It's not the most beautiful accommodation often. So I think it's appropriate that people have chutzpah, like have life force, but when they're in trouble or when they feel unsafe or they've been hurt, the fact that you thought, I can't immediately tell someone, that lack of psychological safety is so pervasive for me. And when it's not there, with certain teams I work with, they have been able to create a psychological safety from the manager down, and the positive impact is extraordinary, right?
Definitely.
So in that moment when you thought, I'm going to get the piss taken out of me, was it obvious to you how much you'd hurt yourself? Like, was it clear?
Not really. So the more I kind of toughened up and continued putting in the hard work, the more I realised that this is not okay. Like, I couldn't really stand up that much. I had to lie on the ground and get my colleagues to walk on my back, or I was like, thought I could ease out the pain, not knowing what I had done. And then, yeah, I had to be flown out. And that's kind of when I ended up in hospital because I couldn't walk. And yeah, I went through a long time of testing to figure out what it was. And yeah, it took a while because they thought it might have been my disc, and it was only a bulging disc, but the symptoms I was having didn't really resonate with it. And yeah, it was like I had to get the MRI with the dye put in it. And that's when they found, oh, you have
Hang
this.
on.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, that's bad. So it was definitely life-changing. But yeah, it's just it's allowed me to build something that's going to give back in a space that I'm definitely passionate about. And yeah, I remember going to all the networking events when I eventually started to walk better, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in so much pain, I need to go home. And like, it was just, yeah, it was definitely a challenge, but yeah, I know that it's allowed me to build something really incredible. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can hear that. I think it's a very useful way to use pain and trauma is to go, well, what did it birth, right? So if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't had my own experience, you were clearly already being a support to people, but going, hang on, if this happens to someone else, I don't want that. This has been terrible. And all, like you said, the complexity of the process, whether to involve workers' comp or not, what that means, and cleverly thinking of that older fellow and thinking, you know, what decision might he make, worst case scenario, if he doesn't know what's next, you know? So, you know, if we had a magic wand, your circumstance would have been different at that time. But I can hear in what you're saying that the idea of Enjoy Your Mind is creating a softness through education. That's probably not language you use, but when I think of what it would provide, it provides an ease or a softness or a comfort or a humanity to a place that can be very much not that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's like a pillow essentially in a fearful and maybe unsafe space for some people. Like if there is a level of hierarchy that they may, like the FIFO workers on the ground level may not feel safe to speak to. Sometimes workers just want something external because they'd be afraid of info being shared. I guess we're just there for them to come in and just kind of lay back and get the support they need. I always like to say it as, you know, they're carrying this big backpack with all their issues, and that we're there for them to unload it, unpack it, and to be able to leave with like a group of people going forward. So it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, it is really exciting, and it's really what's needed, and will progress more and more with people like yourself driving it, right?
Yeah.
So if, say, I was a mind manager and I go, okay, that sounds wonderful, Hazel. What is it that you can provide to my people? What are the different elements of Enjoy Your Mind so people know?
Yeah. So next year, hopefully if we'll all get signed through, we're hosting 4 different pilot programs across 4 mind sites.
Awesome.
That's 2 workshops per month, and we're doing financial literacy education, opportunities to discuss like personal investment and any financial matters. We have a relationship expert that helps with just being able to meet their partner's needs whilst away from home. Anything around mindset, you know, how they can build gratitude in their workspace and for others. We have we have this really cool, he's an ex-MMA fighter, but he does like pain tool management, educational resources by like in a really, really fun way. And it allows them to be able to take those exercises back into their room and just do it anywhere, really.
Oh, so good.
We have like exercise, visual programming, and nutrition. We have TEDx speakers and athletes, professional athletes that speak around resilience. We also have comedians. One particular guy from Fringe, he's really funny. And we have sobriety coaches because there's a whole sober curious movement at the moment.
There is.
So I'm also sober like a year now, and I'm really happy to be this way. But like it was more for health reasons, like inflammation and stuff.
Yes.
We have sleep coaches as well. We have a wide range of people that we're looking to send out there. So it's very exciting.
It is very exciting. And the topics are perfect. Like when I think of those topics, if I think of what people... So when I work as a coach on site, I think I've said on here, or I've certainly thought, it's the only time I've ever thought of going on to do counselling training. A little bit like when you said about people coming to you and you're like, I'm not actually expert at this subject. I'm glad you're coming to talk to me, but I'm just going to do my best with not trained yet, historically as you were. The same kind of thing. And if I think of the topics that come up, you've covered really beautifully some of the things, because for many people, why are they on site? It's a lot around finance, but they don't always know how to be the cleverest with that. Some are very clever, and others, there's not a huge advantage even after years on site, particularly. Sleep comes up, relationships, you're absolutely right, particularly people with young families. The stress on both people is enormous if there's young children at home. Because, of course, I find it so easy to imagine, because this is called 50-50, right? I can imagine both parties. I've been a new mum and been desperate for Andy to be about so I can cope better, but I've been on site and come back from site exhausted and Andy going, here's Sam. So when you got the beauty of going, that's tricky for everyone. The mum is toast, the dad is toast, or vice versa sometimes, less often, but we certainly have a few parents where it's the mum at work and the dad at home, but, they're like, here's the kid, and the other one's like, I haven't slept more than 5 hours in a fortnight, can I have a bit of time? And then, like you're saying, with the relationship cleverness, I think under the banner of most, certainly not the physical things, but the emotional things, there's a massive, for me, the key is around something most people never learn, certainly in Australia, is how to communicate well, how to communicate authentically, assertively, to share how they are. I don't know if you imagine it, and I can imagine it when you think about what Enjoy Your Mind can contribute. I have this fantasy where I imagine everyone could just be who they were and say what's happening, and it'd be okay, and it'd be so beautiful, because I know the beauty of these people, but they don't really know it about one another. It's total tragedy.
Definitely.
It's like, you are all awesome. Why aren't you acting like that? It's not like they act terribly together, but I think I described it here like, you only get the outside of the M&M. You don't get the chocolate.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's so cool. It's like it's a defensive mechanism, though, isn't it? It's a protective front and environments that they feel like they have to act that way to just get on.
I know, but the truth is, Hazel, I'm not on the other side of that. I'm literally sharing vulnerably at the moment and suffering horribly because I feel scared. I'm sharing too much. Are people going to think I'm weird? I'm literally in this journey right now. People like yourself, what always happens is I always think, I'm going to have to cut it out. It's too much. I'm going to go back in my little turtle shell, right? I'm a little bit like you. In emergencies, I will exit. I even asked Danny, I was like, maybe I shouldn't be on LinkedIn. And then I thought, why don't you want to be on LinkedIn? You don't want to be on LinkedIn because it's uncomfortable and you're going to rationalise it, right? I think Facebook's more my thing, It's like, really, what a suspicious feeling you're having at the moment, So I'm very familiar with that. But the thing that always keeps me going is like you will comment. Someone will comment. I'll get a private message. Something magical will happen. Like yesterday, I got 1,000 followers right after sharing in my hair towel, I'm having a bad week, right? And I go, I'll forget this. And then I get the little thing, bing, 1,000 followers. So, and when I think about, to tie it back to the work you're doing, I think that everyone needs a mate, right? So if there's someone who's willing to be brave, 2 people have gone along to one of your courses, Bob and Gary don't normally talk about much together, but they've both been to your course, and then Bob thinks, I'm a bit upset. Look, Gary went to that course on emotional intelligence or dealing with anxiety or whatever it was on. I'm going to mention it to Gary. So I think that's how I feel the impact of the flavour of what you're doing, right? And when I think about people I've worked with who I've trained in that sort of environment, and then how they are with me after that, or how they are with one another, it's not like it's this and thousands of people change. It's moments of magic between people that then, it's that cliche ripple effect, right? So Bob now talks to Gary. Gary is able to show his compassion and humanity. Then Gary goes, well, I know Bob's all right, but Monica was at that show too. I might ask her, and more than anything, how do we think of individuals to talk to so that they goes away and we think, I only need to deal with one person. I only need to be vulnerable with one conversation at a time. I don't have to stand up at the return to work and go, guys, I've got something to tell you.
Yeah, wow, it is so true. It's like that vulnerability hangover, the whole, you feel naked, you feel bare.
Yes.
You're like thinking, what are they thinking of me now that I've just exposed myself like that? So yeah, it's a very difficult thing. It's something that Brené Brown speaks about.
Yes.
And I love because it's so perfectly said. But I feel like, and I actually heard this in one of your podcasts as well, it's like the more you talk about this kind of stuff, the more people are going to be able to get the help that they need, and more people are going to be able to see it within themselves and realize that they're not the only ones going through it.
Yes.
And that's probably the most likely case of it, is that everyone else is kind of having a little bit of it themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right. When I think of that training I did on site one time and people's reaction to it and how they responded to me and one another afterwards, I think the thing, because I told really real stories, difficult stories, and I think what happened, and I'm making it up because they didn't literally say to me, this is what happened, but in their behaviour with me, I think they thought, actually one guy did actually say to me, I had no idea what you'd gone through, love.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I go up there consultant, wearing my FIFO outfit, but a little bit different to everyone else's. My hair's always blow-dried, of course. And so I would have a persona, right? I'm coming in to coach or train or speak, whatever I'm doing. So for these fellows who are really expert at what they do, but not particularly academic normally, they would go, oh, well, she'll be pretty organised, right? Like she's coming in to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, look, I'm dealing with 50,000 different things. You've helped me actually, because in amongst the difficulty I find and this at the moment very big vulnerability hangover I'm in, you've reminded me, why did I want to do it in the first place? I wanted to do it so that if someone reads what I said and goes, thank God it's not only me.
Yeah.
Like I have it when I speak, people will say, oh, good, because you shared really, but I get feedback instantly then, so it's easier for me to feel comfortable because they're going, that was awesome, and I go, oh, good, Whereas now it's like I have to say to myself, keep going, because I was saying to Danielle last time she and I spoke, I will now get messages where people haven't even liked a post, but they'll say, like the perimenopause one, I got quite a few private messages.
It's still going.
Yeah. I know. I got public comments, which I thought was wonderful, but I actually got a number of private comments because, of course, like one of my friends said who did actually comment, but she said, I was only willing to comment because I'm out the other side and in my workplace, I'm not sure if I would be safe to comment in it. That lady you had almost falling down holes, right? Being in that process myself and sort of feeling a bit better as I get treatment, but it's really such an experience of not being oneself, not being able to think, not being able to operate, your brain sort of removed from your body. They talk about the brain fog and everything else. It's really dangerous to have that woman, like you said, if you weren't there. And then, of course, the bullies aren't understanding. Yeah. They're just pissed off because their value piece is let's work hard. When I think of the guys I work with in Drill and Blast, no one works harder. They're so tough. Yeah. They work so hard all day in incredible temperatures. Yeah. These particular ones I work with are good at being compassionate, but it's easy for me to think of other people I've known in teams where they're very good at what they do, they're very tough, and if someone starts to fall down because they're not naturally inclined towards empathy, they haven't thought that way in their lives, they won't go to, why is that person acting like that? They'll go, that's not okay. What the F is going on with them? Yeah. Pick up your game. Yeah. And the person's like, I can barely get a thought through my head, let alone picking up my game, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like I remember even my mom, I went home for a visit and she was going through it and she forgot how to drive. Like all of a sudden she just forgot how to drive and I was like, whoa, like that's like scary. But even not being at that stage of my life, having personal stuff going on, that's my brain would get to a stage, not that I forget how to drive, but like where I don't know how I'm operating.
Yeah.
And like bullying, like that was happening to that woman, and I'm learning about it more and more in mates as well, is like it can actually ruin people's lives. Like it's so vital for people to get like education around what's causing someone to be like that, because it's not going to be their normal state. And it's just like, yeah, it's basically just uneducated people that go, that person is, you know, away with the fairies, or they're dumb, or this and that.
Yes.
And like my own personal experience with it is, I when I do have a lot of stuff going on in life, I will, yeah, my mind won't be there.
Yes.
And my own personal experience with bullying was when I was very young, and it was for the same reasons. It was like I was always that girl that was like in school but not really in school. Like I was just looking out the window, I was a bit dopey, like I had so much stuff going on in my mind. And I was going through a lot of cognitive issues. I was fainting in school, I was having all these sorts of problems.
Yeah, wow.
And then I started to get bullied in school because of it, by like very, very close friends at the time. And yeah, it just really, it could have ruined my life. Like it was very horrible. So I really related to what she was going through when I seen it happen on site. Like my parents were going through like the loss of all their businesses. Like they had like multiple businesses at the time, and you know, it got to the stage where they had refinanced the house, and we were going through a massive crisis, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I was so young, but it was just a change of like having money to not having money, and not
was
knowing.
this at the same time as the bullying happening? Was it all happening at once?
Yeah, all happening at once. And like my parents don't really fight at all. Like they're so like in love and gorgeous, but I didn't understand why there were some changes there. And yeah, I just remember like two of my friends said, "Oh, have you noticed that your friends are being different around you?" And I was like, yeah, they keep talking about this person called Martin, and they're saying like horrible things about this person called Martin, like, oh, we don't like Martin, why did you invite Martin, and Martin's dopey, Martin's this. And then my friend said, oh, that's actually you, they did a nickname about you. And I was like so hurt. And around that time I was young, and it's very accessible to turn to drink in Ireland, and as like coping mechanisms and other like substances. And I just kind of went into that direction, like with the people I hung around with. And I unfortunately lost someone very close to my heart. Myself and my friend were begging someone very close to me to come up to see a famous Australian DJ, actually, Will Sparks. And he had work the following day, so he like kindly like rejected, and we just begged and begged for them. I offered him to take my seat on the way home, and then unfortunately they ended up crashing, and he passed in that crash. And my whole life was flipped around from like being bullied around those certain things, and from that. And I remember thinking like I wanted to escape. And around Ireland, around that time, like it was no stranger. Again, I'm going to be talking about some triggering things. So I hope that anyone that's listening, they may just decide to stop listening at this time, as we'll be talking about suicide, mental health. But yeah, I just thought my world was over. I felt like I held on to the responsibility of that happening. And I just wanted my life to be like over. I was doing reckless things, like reckless behavior, getting myself in life or death situations with people I was hanging around with. You know, around this time my friends would have been stabbed. Like two of my friends were stabbed. Luckily they're alive, but like it was like a lot of gypsies in our town, and they'd come in, and a lot of suicides. Like a lot of the boys in the boys' school would take their own lives, and it wasn't uncommon. So I would kind of look into the reason of why these boys were taking their own lives, and commonly enough it was due to bullying. And I was like, oh, if this is what people do when they're bullied, like this is what I need to do.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I really just put like a plan in place, and I attempted, and luckily it failed. And I remember finally speaking to someone about it, and I was told to F off and do it so, and that to me isn't someone who's like a bad person, it's someone to me that's uneducated around it.
Yes.
And I knew that it wasn't like, you know, I just knew that I had to leave where I was. At that time I was 16 years of age, so I moved out and I was like just trying to find my feet. I was still being a bit reckless. And eventually someone from a level authority, when I was kind of getting into trouble a bit, I was always a really kind person, never hurt anyone, but I was just a bit reckless. And he said, if you get in trouble, like if you get a criminal record or anything like that, you won't be able to go to Australia, Canada, or America.
Oh, yeah.
And they were always my dream, the three of them. Like Australia was always the first place I wanted, Canada and America. Like I wanted to study as an international student for psychology in America. Canada, I just wanted to travel. But
Yes.
I was like, I need to change my life around. And ended up, because I was having these cognitive issues, I couldn't hold a job. So I remember working in McDonald's and I didn't get the job. And I was like, if I can't get a job at McDonald's, I'm not going to get a job anywhere. Like, because I was just like essentially just all over the place, like mentally. And then I eventually got a job in a hotel, saved some money, and then I moved to Spain. I was like, okay, I'm going to change my life. But what I didn't realize is that I was still carrying all of the internal issues that I had built, like lack of self-worth, like not being able to stand up for myself. Just like all these other internal issues that led to me having put myself in more dangerous situations as soon as I went to Spain.
Okay.
So I found myself in like abusive situations quite often, and that was due to like this lack of self-love that I would have had from what was going on.
Yes.
And I always found myself in that same exile pattern of wanting to escape, like by the end of doing the same patterns and same behaviors. So it was like every country I moved to, things did get better. Like Spain, it was bad. I didn't have any money, so there were a lot of like times I was struggling financially there, and I don't know how I actually got out of Spain alive, to be honest. It's some of the things that happened there, but I allowed myself to stay in a very like physical abusive relationship for too long. And I remember coming to a stage of like needing to escape again, and I managed to. One of my best friends, her mum passed away, and she was like, "Why hasn't she came home? Why hasn't my best friend came home?" But my ex-partner had taken my phone and everything because it's very controlling.
Yes.
But anyways, she managed to get me and fly over. And I ended up flying to Lanzarote, and that's where I moved to Lanzarote. And things just got better as I started to move on.
Yes.
And I guess where I'm going with this is that my exit pattern from how I would like try and survive in life, I guess, would always end up to be me being in that time of desperation and not having any help, and wanting life to be kind of over. But I just held on to that little bit of hope, led me like eventually to WA, and I again found myself in a bit of an abusive situation in New South Wales before I left to come over to WA.
Yeah.
And that's when like I found spirituality coming into my life, and I started seeing like signs that meant something personally to me, and I just followed them, and my heart really led me to WA. And after the injury and everything, and it was during COVID, and I couldn't see my family, and I'd lost 2 friends around that time as well, I was like, you know, I don't know like how I'm going to continue. Like I had been around people all the time, like these incredible people that I, just loved and adored.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how I was going to get by. And that's when I found my faith. But I was on my knees in a time of desperation, and I was like, oh, like I can't do this like anymore. And then I found like God to me and my faith. But around that time, I remember talking to one of my friends, and she had been educated through the mental health first aid program.
Yes.
And when she knew exactly what to do and where to lead me and to get me the help that I needed, I was like, that's the glimmer of hope that I've been holding on to for like over a decade. Like, this is what it is.
Yes.
And then like my own company, Enjoy Your Mind, led me to hearing a public speaker, Happiness Co. You know, he was talking about how he lost his dad to suicide, and I was like, oh, people are actually talking about suicide. I was like, wow, I'm not alone. Like, you know, that's when you started to hear that people were being vulnerable and talking out loud, and I was like, wow, there's more hope there. And like, I just started to find myself getting to know all these incredible organizations in Perth that speak out loud about suicide and mental health issues. And I was like, okay, like, this is it. I'm going to be able to flip my life around. I'm going to get the education that I need to get help and be able to change how I think about things. And that's kind of how I ended up finding myself in Mates now as well. And it was like so incredible to know that just being able to talk about it actually can save people.
Yes.
And yeah, what was really, really interesting for me was as well knowing that females are actually like 3 times more likely to attempt suicide than men. But yeah, men are more likely to actually die by suicide.
Yes.
But throughout all of that and everything else, I think what really gave me that sense of fulfillment was my spirituality.
Yes.
And following the signs. And I really believe that Enjoy Your Mind was created from following those signs. Like, I met a man in Manly in Sydney when I went on my rostered day off. I actually had 3 days off that time. And he came up to me with this book, and it was like, Ask and It Shall Be Given.
Oh, wow.
And I was with my friend Billy at that time, and she was really spiritual and I wasn't, and she was collecting things that were in the shape of a heart, and we were like, this girl's lost her mind. Like, she's seen everything in the shape of a heart. And yeah, he was like, I want to give you this book, Ask and It Shall Be Given. It's like a really spiritual book. And then I was like, okay, cool, but I wasn't like as enthusiastic as he probably would have liked me to be. He's like, actually, no, I'm going to give it to your friends. So I was like, oh, okay, like, I'm not going to get that book. And yeah, I was like, okay. And he was like, but I will tell you that the North Star is going to have a significant meaning to you one day. And I was like, okay, cool. So in the meantime, Billy's like collecting all of her hearts, and she felt that her heart was being pulled to Tasmania. She follows all the signs. It takes her to Tasmania. She ends up working on a farm again, falls in love with an Australian guy. They have their first baby, and she's like, oh, do you believe in signs? He's like, oh, kind of, not really. But like, she was like, oh, I was following all of these heart signs to get to you. And he goes, oh, Tasmania is actually in the shape of a heart. And she was like, oh my God, it was just so beautiful. So on my side, when I went over to WA, and after my injury, I started seeing signs for the North Star, and my friend had just invited me to do a trip from Perth to Broome. And I was like, absolutely not. I was like months kind of bedbound because of my injury.
Yeah.
And then she was like, well, you're just going to get like more depressed in bed. Like, she gave me that tough Irish love.
Yes.
And then, yeah, I was like, okay, let's do it. So within the second day, there was 8 of us at the time traveling, and there was a guy who had like a Northern Star necklace, and I was like, okay, this means something. I need to figure out what it is. And it turned out that like his dad had a really successful business in Belgium, and he had his own business, and he had set up websites before for other people, and he taught me everything, like how to build up Enjoy Your Mind.
Oh, wow.
And then like a few days later, I was following the signs again, and I led myself into the Minister of Mining's office in Port Hedland when I was going to the toilet. I was like, this is so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just like constant like synchronicities.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's now the Minister of Innovation, and stay in touch with him. He's also Irish, so that was incredible. And then I get to Broome, and I was trying to get a hold of a facilitator for like several weeks, and he's a financial expert in the space for like over 35 years. And yeah, no answer. He finally calls me back. He's like, Hazel, I'm so sorry I missed your call. I'm away on holidays, whatever. I was like, it's okay, me too. And we found out we're both like in Broome on Cable Beach, staying in the same caravan park, everything else. So I was like, this is awesome. And yeah, then I ended up having a real authentic experience with an Indigenous mob in Signey Bay. I had just complimented a man with the incredible hat. Like, he was an artist, Bruce Wiggin. He's pretty famous in WA and all of Australia, actually. And he took us all out bush, picking oysters fresh off the rocks, spearfishing, welcome to country. We got to create our own like bushfire for the welcome ceremony, got to listen to storytelling. And then that led me to opening up a book called The Dreaming Path, which is the traditional lore methods for well-being. And I just like stayed in my car for 2 days reading this book because I knew the last piece of Enjoy Your Mind was in there. And yeah, it was the spirituality sense of it, like knowing that the lore is that, yeah, in order for me to be well, you need to be well. And they have that individual amount of care. And one incredible story that was, and I think I shared this with you before, so.
It's okay,
yeah.
Please do.
Yeah, and it was just that there was a young man out on the land and he had negative energy around him, which could look like anxiety, depression, or stress, which 80% of the mining workers have. And they took this young man off the land and they helped him through storytelling and that individual care, being able to open up about what he was going through. And then once he was able to do that, he was brought back out into the land with everyone else when he had that positive energy around him. And then I saw it from the perspective of all my studies and research of mental health in mining. And I was like, that would have been 80% of the workers taken off the industry just to get that amount of care that they actually need to bring wellness as a community all together as one. So I reached out to that author anyways, and the day that I was going to be in Darwin, he was in Darwin for one day all the way from Sydney, and he signed my book, and it was just incredible. Yeah, it was really beautiful. But what it was when I was in Broome, I was trying to come up with a name for Enjoy Your Mind, and the BHP and Creating Communities just launched an innovation challenge to create better mining spaces. Put Enjoy Your Mind through, and we got accepted, but I was coming up with a name, and yeah, I was like, oh, I want to call it Arrive As You Are, Authentic As You Are, so that the FIFO workers can arrive on site and just be as authentic as they are and get to know each other. And then my friend, this Belgian guy, he said, well, actually, what about like Enjoy Your Mind, a better mind for a better mind? And I was like, okay, cool. I honestly feel like I wouldn't have made it all the way without him, and it showed me the power of not only like a diverse community, because we were all from different backgrounds, different places, but also the 50-50 target radio. I needed a man like there, as he helped with a lot of the physical side that we wouldn't have been able to do as like females, and yeah, there was so much balance needed for that trip to get through some of the obstacles and hurdles. So from a wider perspective, it showed and reflected the 50-50 target radio and its importance. But yeah, then my mom was like, oh, are you going to use AYA one day, like Arrive As You Are, Authentic As You Are? Do you know what it means? And we looked it up, and it's like the Quranic meaning for signs and clues of God's existence. And that's like what I was following were the little clues. So it was really beautiful. Yeah, so awesome. It was really nice. I was chatting away for ages. Yeah, it was very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, very beautiful. Your story is, I'm glad you kept talking after you talked about your attempted suicide, because I would have just spent the rest of the podcast crying.
I think. No, sorry.
Just at the thought of, no, don't be sorry. It did a couple of things. One was to feel so grateful that didn't happen. That's a very basic way of saying it.
Yeah.
But also you can hear the two things running, right? You can hear this young girl, beautiful young girl, as you would have been, because you are, and then this external force of uneducated, being brought up however they're being brought up, ignorant, the everything coming together at the wrong time, right? And then you having to live through that. And then you can hear, like the ayah, you can hear the right friend, the right moment. In that early patch, it sounds like the right person would arrive just in time, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Even with the being up in the horses in Queensland and the friend rings from Sydney after seeing your post.
Yeah.
It's like you've had these little perfectly timed supporters.
Yeah.
It's sort of hard for me to say it properly, but I feel like the combination of what you're trying to do, who you've been, where you've come from, coupled with these difficulties, I would have wished none of the difficulties for you. And I can hear from your use of them now, they are part of the reason that you are going to be able to do what you do, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
So with the ayah, is that something that is in play now? Is it going to be in play? Is it going to be called ayah, or is it going to be called WAAYA? Like, where is that side of things up to?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's it was interesting for me to see that it was Quranic, like Islamic.
Yes.
A huge part of my story in Malta and Spain was actually helping refugees that were Islamic. And again, I would have had to do a lot of suicide interventions with them. And there's like horror stories of like kidnapping in North Africa coming across. So there was a lot of issues from like refugee immigrants around that I had to help. And I got to study the Quran, I got to do Ramadan and really get to learn a lot about it. And it means a lot to me. And then to see that it also meant incredibly a lot to me as well from a spiritual side of things. So yeah, on Saturday, I'm going to be doing my first workshop with Aya, Arrive as You Are, Authentic as You Are. And what it's really about is just showing people that you were like fearfully and wonderfully made, like just the way you are, and like that's kind of enough for you to have that self-love. And you know, when I go scuba diving or when I look around at nature, I am never criticizing anything that's you know, a creation of God, unless it's a mosquito maybe, but like I'm just kind of like, yeah, just in awe about like the whale sharks, for example, like snorkeling with them. I'm like, oh, that's absolutely incredible. But we are our own biggest critics.
Yes.
And I know that I was so harsh on myself for different things, and I thought like, oh, like literally like that being shown what Aya meant, like showed me that we're not alone here. And yeah, like I really want people to be able to step into themselves and know that they are just incredible the way they are, and I just want them to be able to express themselves and get to know themselves, and to really be able to find the tools that they need to create the lives that they want to make as well, knowing that they can do that as well. So
it's so wonderful. I love it. And I should come on Saturday because it's one of the things I need to learn more about. That thing you said about nature, I've shared on here before, a thing that I love with Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, he's passed away now, the mindfulness monk. He talked about, you know, if you had lettuces that were dying, you know, you wouldn't yell at the lettuce, right? You wouldn't go, stupid lettuce. You'd give it water and snail pellets and whatever it needed, right? And he said, but we yell at ourselves. And of course, we know with our particular psychology and our limbic system and all the rest, we started trying to keep ourselves alive and have talked to ourselves about that ever since, often in not useful ways, right? Do this better, don't do this, you know, rather than, like you said, that compassion of, it's always easier with someone else, right? Like when I'm looking at you, hearing your story, I'm like, oh my God, you're so beautiful, you know, and you actually very much are. But it's true to say when you get to know anyone you're sitting across from, when you really know they're so beautiful. And that's the thing that I think makes me saddest, and what makes me so excited about the work you're doing, or in my way I'm trying to do. It's like, if you got to know this person, you think they're so good, and I know you haven't seen them. It's the same with you said, I wanted to come back just to make sure we said it when you said it's all right to talk about suicide.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learnt that I was surprised by was that you're allowed to say to someone, are you thinking of doing that?
Yeah.
And actually I was at the park yesterday and I asked a fellow because he was talking about some, he was talking about, he said he's all right at the moment, but I said, you know, here's my number and, you know, etc., because he was talking in a way where I thought, I'm going to use that advice I got where you don't pussyfoot around, you say, are you thinking of doing this, you know?
Yeah.
So there's that element. Andy, my husband, gets very upset by are you okay because it's a closed question.
Yeah.
And he's passionate about open questions, Hazel.
Wow.
Like how are we going to get information if we say are you okay? Because most Australians will go, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Whereas if we go, how are you? You seem a bit, you know, it's a little bit different.
Definitely.
So that is very exciting, both elements.
Did you do your assist program to be able to ask? Like, did you know it because you did it some training, or someone kind of helped you?
I have done mental health training,
Yeah.
and also I've got a coaching diploma, but mental health wasn't a big focus of that. As Danielle and I laugh about, I'm an information collector.
Oh,
so
wow,
I've got to
okay.
tell you my latest one. Oh, it's over. I've never gone off screen before.
Oh.
It's time for everything. I love. So the whole idea of 50-50 was that I share my truth and talk about how I've used the wisdom of the world to move through things, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason it's a bit more exciting at the moment is because I'm moving through some very big stuff, right?
Yeah.
But this is what was on, I'm going to share this on LinkedIn actually. This is by Baal Shem Tov. It makes me feel like it might be Jewish, but I could be totally wrong. Baal Shem Tov is the author, and the line is, let me fall if I must fall, the one I become will catch me.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's so incredible.
Let me fall if I'm David Whiting it every time. Let me fall if I must fall. The one I become will catch me.
Wow, that is like your higher self just ready there for you.
Right? Like,
yeah. Yeah, that's how I know it's not about me, but that's how I feel in WA right now, because everyone's getting that education around it. I feel safer just being here, as well as maybe like my younger self kind of being caught by who I am now. But yeah, I feel like WA is really setting a good example in this mental health space.
How cool.
It's really exciting because it gives me a lot of faith for generations to come if they're having any issues. Like, even just working with mates now is like shown me that the person who I did speak to back then, who I love so dearly, but it was just the wrong answer to give me at that time, or maybe not, because I'm where I am.
Yeah, that's right.
But they were the ones that were having it tough, and that was their way of saying, you know, something to protect themselves as well. So it's just been able to give me the understanding of people around me, and it's absolutely incredible, the power that we have as humans. Like, you felt it that day that someone was actually going through a tough time. You didn't know him, did you?
No, I knew him, as in he was an acquaintance.
Okay.
And we were just at the park together, and I'd heard he'd been going through a tough time, and I said, hey, how are you, what's going on? And he told me a little bit, and then he alluded to maybe making that decision. And I said, are you thinking about doing that? And the only reason I asked is because I'd heard, don't feel scared to ask if you get a sign that, or they say something that makes you go, hang on, I'm a little bit worried.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I couldn't be more grateful that whatever kept you going from back then, you know, like, I'm just so glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful. But you could hear, it's a little bit like we were talking, Danielle and I were talking on our last Friday 50-50 about how the heart's call can be soft.
Yeah.
It felt like just these little threads hold on to you, right? So you think big stuff's happening, dramatic, terrible, and then this little thing would happen, either a little input from a person or a thought for yourself, and then you go, keep going, I'm going to keep going. And then you have that pivotal moment of, hang on, I'm going to approach this from a spiritual sense, and you can feel the solidity in that for you, the meaning, the security, the joy. You can hear it all in being able to see that. Yeah.
That's what, like, literally what you have to do, or what we're told to do in a suicide intervention, is you have to try and listen to that person's story and find that glimmer of hope for them, and then emphasize on that glimmer of hope, like to get them to the next stage. There's a whole stage process which you can do like your assist training for. It's a full 2-day course. But yeah, it's essentially that. It's maybe it doesn't take them 11 years like mine did, but like it's more whilst you're having that conversation, you as the listener find it for them and then try and ask them questions on that and give them a reason to live and stay here. So it's really interesting, and it's credible that we have the education now to be able to do that for others. So.
Yeah, and I really love you saying that you feel like Western Australia is in a good position, because I've been here for a number of years. It's my hometown, but I've been away and come back. It's nice to have that perspective, because when you haven't seen an outside perspective, it's like, oh, what do you mean it's going well here? Like, that's good to hear as a Western Australian. And I can see things that are happening, but it wouldn't have occurred to me that this is good times here in terms of the actions that are being taken. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, that is good, yeah. Like even just asking people, we have a question where we ask a room full of people if they know someone, and usually all the hands here in WA will be raised. So obviously I can see it's a massive issue, but just to know that the education's being put into place, that's where I'm like, this is great, because it's definitely causing an impact. So yeah, that's great. Yeah. And reduce the horrific loss and allow people to blossom, allow people to continue to learn and grow and experience, and like you've done, right? Yeah,
like
definitely.
The life since then has been extraordinary, and then it will be more so. Wow,
Yeah.
Aren't we lucky that you're here and that you've figured it out and been strong and brave and faith-filled?
That's it, yeah. It's just another sense of fulfillment and joy for sure, yeah.
I've got to tell you 2 funny things, because we're talking about signs. I did a course a couple of weeks ago, and very strongly in amongst it, I was like, I have to go to Innisfail.
Oh my gosh, no way! And then it's like the first thing that I said.
And like you said, Innisfail is a small rural town in North Queensland. I've literally driven through it, and weirdly at the time I thought I meant to be here. Yeah. And then it came up, this is years later. And then I was like, that's so funny. And then your friend collecting hearts.
Yeah.
One of my beloved cousins has an Instagram page called Global Hearts Collective. Oh. She takes photos of when she sees hearts, and every time I see a heart, I send her one from site. There was one in the red dirt.
Oh,
and I said, they're even up here.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's so funny. You mentioned the same thing.
That's so aligned. Oh my god. Yeah, definitely meant to be.
yeah, right? Yeah. And I'm also looking to change my name. And then I thought that'd be really nice. I'm going to call myself Aya. And I thought, now you're getting carried away. That's what happens. But it's all right.
It's trademarked, don't worry.
Like that, right? Yeah. You're like, are you talking about the business? And no, I took it as my name. Totally separate thing. Contact Hazel if you'd like to know about the business.
Yeah.
So you've literally got a workshop this Saturday.
This Saturday, yeah.
And then Enjoy Your Mind, if people would like to know more, is it enjoyyourmind.com, enjoyyourmind.com.au?
Yeah, so enjoyyourmind.com. And I believe I attached 2 domains to the website, so either or works. So enjoyyourmind.com is the main one. One thing I actually forgot to say was when I managed to get to Darwin after getting the signature of that author, there was another man. He's one of the last Aboriginal people within his mob to have overcome the war with up in Darwin. Okay, that's just a blank moment there.
That's all right.
But he was painting the North Star. And I came to him and he ended up giving me this painting.
Oh, wow.
And I took it home anyways and I put it on the wall. And then one day it just fell down and I realised that he had written that God is with whoever... God is with wherever this painting goes. And I just thought it was so beautiful. But yeah, that was just the ending of the story that I forgot to say. But
that's a beautiful ending of the story. Yeah. And what you've done for me is I have signs. I know I'm supported, and you've helped reinforce my ability to listen to that and feel safe in the process, have trust in... I am looked after. Every time I feel like I can't keep going, some little thing will happen or a big thing will happen. And it's like, all right, okay, okay, come on, keep going, it's all right, you know. So the it's a bit like someone that has a religious faith, that sort of spiritual faith around things are as they're meant to be, and I'll follow my heart, you know.
Definitely, yeah.
It's just that it whispers softly, so we have to listen.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, right.
Definitely.
Jesus, so nice to have you here,
Yeah,
Hazel. I'm
so
so
nice to
glad
be
we
here.
met.
Thank
I feel
you.
really, really lucky that we got to meet. You're so wonderful in the work you're doing, and I just can't wait to see where it goes.
Oh, likewise. Yeah, definitely. I can't wait to see where this continues to go as well. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.